Hello students, today we are going to discuss the second chapter of geography, that is natural resources, land, soil, water, natural vegetation and wildlife. Now in this chapter we are basically going to discuss it in three parts. First is about the land and soil resources, then water resources, and the last natural vegetation and wildlife resources. Now, in certain books, these three parts have been merged and given as a single chapter, but in certain other books, it has been given in three separate chapters. Over here in this video, we are going to discuss it as a single video, and we will be discussing all the three parts one by one. So, let's start first with the land resource. Now, talking about the land resource, now land is among the most important natural resources. It covers only about 30% of the total area of the earth's surface, and all parts of this small percentage are not habitable. The uneven distribution of population in different parts of world is mainly due to varied characteristics of land and climate. The rugged topography, steep slopes of the mountains, low-lying areas susceptible to waterlogging, desert areas, thick forested areas are normally sparsely populated or uninhabited. Plains and river valleys offer suitable land for agriculture. Hence, these are the densely populated areas of the world. Now, talking about the land use, land is used for different purposes such as agriculture, forestry, mining, building houses, roads, and setting up of industries. This is commonly termed as land use. The use of land is determined by physical factors such as topography, soil, climate, minerals, and availability of water. Human factors such as population and technology are also important determinants of land use patterns. Land can also be classified on the basis of ownership as private land and community land. Private land is owned by individuals, whereas community land is owned by the community for common uses like collection of fodder, fruits, nuts, or medicinal herbs. These community lands are also called common property resources. Now, people and their demands are ever growing, but the availability of land is limited. The quality of land also differs from place to place. People started encroaching the common lands to build up commercial areas, housing complexes in the urban areas, and to expand the agricultural land in the rural areas. Today, the vast changes in the land use pattern also reflect the cultural changes in our society. Land degradation, landslides, soil erosion, desertification are the major threats to the environment because of the expansion of agriculture and construction activities. Now, this growing population and their ever growing demand has led to a large scale destruction of forest cover and arable land and has created a fear of losing this natural resource. Therefore, the present rate of degradation of land must be checked. Afforestation, land reclamation, regulated use of chemical pesticide and fertilizers, and checks on overgrazing are some of the common methods used to conserve land resources. Now, one of the major threat of land degradation is landslides. Landslides are simply defined as the mass movement of rocks, debris, or earth down a slope. They often take place in conjunction with earthquakes, floods, and volcanoes. A prolonged spell of rainfall can cause heavy landslide that can block the flow of river for quite some time. The formation of river blocks can cause havoc to the settlements downstream on its bursting. In the hilly terrain, landslides have been a major and widely spread natural disaster that often strike life and property and occupy a position of major concern. Now, among various measures or mitigation mechanism to avoid this situation, first is the construction of retention wall to stop land from slipping. Then comes the next step, that is hazard mapping to locate areas prone to landslides. Hence, such areas can be avoided for building settlements. Then, increase in the vegetation cover to arrest landslides is another option. Another measure can be that the surface drainage control works to control the movement of landslide among along with rain and rainwater and spring flows. Now let's move on to our next topic, that is soil resource. Now over here in this figure you can see the process of soil formation. Now soil is the thin layer of grainy substances covering the surface of the earth. It is closely linked to land. Landforms determine the type of soil. Soil is made up of organic matter, minerals, and weathered rocks found on the earth. This happens through the process of weathering. The right mix of minerals and organic matter make the soil fertile. Now, weathering, this word means the breaking up and decay of exposed rocks by temperature changes, frost actions, plants, animals, and human activity. Now, do you know that it takes hundred of years to make just 1 centimeter of soil? Indeed, that is a very real fact. Now, talking about the factors of soil formation, the major factors of soil formation are the nature of the parent rock and climatic factors. Other factors are the topography, role of organic material, and time taken for the composition of soil formation. All these differ from place to place. Now, if we talk about degradation of soil and conservation measures, see, soil erosion and depletion are the major threats to soil as a resource. Both human and natural factors can lead to degradation of soils. Factors which lead to soil degradation are deforestation, overgrazing, overuse of chemical fertilizers or pesticides, rainwash, landslides, and floods. Now, some methods of soil conservation are: first is mulching. In mulching, the bare ground between plants is covered with a layer of organic matter like straw. It helps to retain soil moisture. The second method is terrace farming. Now, in this, broad flat steps or terraces are made on the steep slopes so that flat surfaces are available to grow crops. They reduce surface runoff and soil erosion. Then comes contour barriers. Now, stones, grass, soil, are used to build barriers along contours. Trenches are made in front of the barriers to collect water. As you can see in this figure, contour barriers are shown in this figure. Now over here you can see the next method, that is intercropping. The figure shows it very clearly. Now what intercropping actually means? It means when different crops are grown in alternate rows and are sown at different times to protect the soil from rainwash, that is called intercropping. Now over here you can see the next method, that is contour plowing. Now what contour plowing actually means? It means plowing parallel to the contours of hill slope form a natural barrier for water to flow down the slope. The next method is shelter builds. Now in the coastal area and dry regions, rows of trees are planted to check the wind movement to protect soil cover. Now as you can see over here, rows of plant trees have been grown all around the field so that the wind movement can be controlled, so that it can protect soil. Now among some other methods to conserve soil, there is rock dam method, in which rocks are piled up to slow down the flow of water. This prevents gullies and further soil loss. Apart from this method, there are some other methods like afforestation, that is growing up of more trees and plants, control of overgrazing, and control of overuse of chemical fertilizers or pesticides, rain wash, that is soil erosion due to rain, landslides and floods. Now students, let's discuss about our next topic, that is water resources. Now as you all know, water is a vital renewable natural resource. 3/4 of the earth's surface is covered with water. It is therefore appropriately called the water planet. It was in the primitive oceans that life began almost 3.5 billion years back. Even today, the oceans cover 2/3 of the earth's surface and support a rich variety of plant and animal life. The ocean water is, however, saline and not fit for human consumption. Fresh water accounts for only 2.7%. Nearly 70% of this occurs as ice sheets and glaciers in Antarctica, Greenland, and mountain regions. Due to their location, they are inaccessible. Only 1% of the fresh water is available and fit for human use. It is found as groundwater, as surface water in rivers and lakes, and as water vapor in the atmosphere. Fresh water is therefore the most precious substance on earth. Water can neither be added nor subtracted from the earth. Its total volume remains constant. Its abundance only seems to vary because it is in constant motion, cycling through the oceans, the air, the land, and back again, through the process of evaporation, precipitation, and runoff. This, as you already know, is referred to as the water cycle. Humans use huge amounts of water not only for drinking and washing, but also in the process of production, water for agriculture, industries, generating electricity through reservoirs of dams are the other usages. Increasing population, rising demands for food and cash crops, increasing urbanization, and rising standards of living are the major factors leading to shortages in supply of fresh water, either due to drying up of water sources or water pollution. Now, there is scarcity of water in many regions of the world. Most of Africa, West Asia, South Asia, parts of Western USA, Northwest Mexico, parts of South America, and entire Australia are facing shortages in freshwater supply. Countries located in climatic zones most susceptible to droughts face great problems of water scarcity. Thus, water shortage may be a consequence of variation in seasonal or annual precipitation, or the scarcity is caused by over exploitation and contamination of water resources. Now, when we talk about how to conserve the water resources, now access to clean and adequate water sources is a major problem facing the world today. Steps have to be taken to conserve this dwindling resource. Even though water is a renewable resource, its overuse and pollution make it unfit for use. Discharge of untreated or partially treated sewage, agricultural chemicals, and industrial effluents in water bodies are major contaminants. They pollute water with nitrates, metals, and pesticides. Most of these chemicals are non biodegradable and reach human bodies through water. Water pollution can be controlled by treating these effluents suitably before releasing them in water bodies. Forests and other vegetation cover slow the surface runoff and replenish underground water. Water harvesting is another method to water, save surface runoff. The canals used to irrigate field should be properly lined to minimize losses by water seepage. Sprinklers effectively irrigate the area by checking water losses through seepage and evaporation. In dry regions with high rates of evaporation, drip or trickle irrigation is very useful. The valuable water resource can therefore be conserved by adopting these means of irrigation. Now let's talk about the third part of this chapter, that is natural vegetation and wildlife resources. Natural vegetation and wildlife exists only in the narrow zone of contact between the lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere that we call biosphere. In the biosphere, living beings are interrelated and interdependent on each other for survival. This life supporting system is known as the ecosystem. Vegetation and wildlife are valuable resources. Plants provide us with timber, give shelter to animals, produce oxygen we breathe, protects soil, so essential for growing crops, act as shelter belts, help in storage of underground water, give us fruits, nuts, latex, turpentine oil, gum, etc. There are innumerable uses of plants, and you can add some more. Wildlife includes animals, birds, insects, as well as the aquatic life forms. They provide us milk, meat, hides, and wool. Insects like bees provide us honey, help in pollination of flower, and have an important role to play as decomposers in the ecosystem. The birds feed on insects and act as decomposers as well. Vulture, due to its ability to feed on dead livestock, is a scavenger and considered a vital cleanser of the environment. So animals, big or small, all are integral to maintaining balance in the ecosystem. Now, if we talk about the distribution of natural vegetation, the growth of vegetation depends primarily on the temperature and moisture. The major vegetation types of the world are grouped as forests, grasslands, scrubs, and tundra. In areas of heavy rainfall, huge trees may thrive. The forests are thus associated with areas having abundant water supply. As the amount of moisture decreases, the size of trees and their density reduces. Short stunted trees and grasses grow in the regions of moderate rainfall, forming the grasslands of the world. Thorny shrubs and scrubs grow in dry areas of low rainfall. In such areas, plants have deep roots and leaves with thorny and waxy surface reduce loss of moisture through transpiration. Tundra vegetation of cold polar regions comprise of mosses and lichens. Now forests are broadly classified as evergreen and deciduous depending on when they shed their leaves. Evergreen forests do not shed their leaves simultaneously in any season of the year. Deciduous forests shed their leaves in a particular season to conserve loss of moisture through transpiration. Both type of forests are further classified as tropical or temperate based on their location in different latitudes. Today, there are many more people in the world than there were 2 centuries back. To feed the growing numbers, large areas of forests have been cleared to grow crops. Forest cover all over the world is vanishing rapidly. There is an urgent need to conserve this valuable resource. Now, according to Mahatma Gandhi, what we are doing to the forest of the world is but a mirror reflection of what we are doing to ourselves and to one another. Now, the matter comes on conservation of natural vegetation and wildlife. Now, as you all know, forests are our wealth. Plants give shelter to the animals and together they maintain the ecosystem. Changes of climate and human interferences can cause the loss of natural habitats for the plants and animals. Many species have become vulnerable or endangered, and some are on the verge of extinction. Deforestation, soil erosion, constructional activities, forest fires, tsunami, and landslides are some of the human and natural factors which accelerate the process of extinction of these resources. One of the major concerns is the poaching, which result in a sharp decline in the number of particular species. The animals are poached for collection and illegal trade of hides, skins, nails, etc. Some of these animals are tiger, lion, elephant, rhinoceros, etc. These can be conserved by increasing awareness. National parks and wildlife sanctuaries and biosphere reserves are made to protect our natural vegetation and wildlife. National park is actually a natural area designated to protect the ecological integrity of one or more ecosystems for the present and the future generation. Now, biosphere reserves are series of protected areas linked through a global network intended to demonstrate the relationship between conservation and development. Now, conservation of creeks, lakes, and wetlands is necessary to save the precious resource from depletion. Now, there is a balance in the environment if the relative number of species is not disturbed. Human activities in several parts of the world have disturbed the natural habitats of many species. Due to indiscriminate killings, several birds and animals have either become extinct or are on the verge of extinction. Several awareness programs like social forestry and One Mahotsav should be encouraged at the regional and community level. School children should be encouraged to bird watch and visit nature camps so that they appreciate the habitat of varied species. Many countries have passed laws against the trade as well as killing of birds and animals. In India, killing lions, tigers, deers, great Indian bustards, and peacocks is illegal. An international convention CITES, that is CITES, has been established that lists several species of animals and birds in which trade is prohibited. Conservation of plants and animal is an ethical duty of every citizen. Now, CITES, that is CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, is an international agreement between governments. It aims to ensure that international trade in specimens of wild animals and plants does not threaten their survival. Roughly 5,000 species of animals and 28,000 species of plants are protected. Bears, dolphins, cacti, corals, orchids, and aloes are some examples. So, students, this is it for this chapter. Have a thorough study of this chapter, and if you face any kind of problem, do ask the question in the comment section. Thank you.